This is an update on my 100 kV DC power supply, and unfortunately it's failed. Now, if you look at the previous video, what I did, I had a 6-stage Cockcroft multiplier inside here. There's plenty of clearance between the aluminium case. I poured the resin in. I sat it in here so the outside of the case was touching the metal chassis. I held that on a long plastic stick and I was producing coronal discharge about 200mm, and as I brought it closer it was producing quite powerful arcs, and I would say it's probably well over 150 kV DC. And as I was running it for quite some time, I noticed it was arcing from the top of the cable gland to the aluminium body. So I thought, oh, what the hell's going on here? And anyway, it carried on arcing and then it died, and it produces no output now, so clearly it's failed. Now, when the cable goes in, it's a good 20mm into the epoxy resin. Now what I think's happened is the epoxy resin hasn't quite binded to the outside of this cable. And what's happened is the electrical from where the end of the cable was soldered to the end of the voltage multiplier inside, it creeps between the resin and the plastic coating, outside insulation. It's come up through the top of the gland and it's arced through. So, because it's potted in resin, there's not a lot I can do about it, but it was a 6-stage multiplier and it produced well over 150 kV DC, and the cable's only rated for 150 kV. So I've been on the internet to China and I've ordered some more diodes and capacitors, the same value, but rather than making a 6-stage, make it a 3-stage, which uses 6 diodes and 6 capacitors, because each stage is made of 2. And rather than pot it in resin, I'm going to try and find a plastic container that will house them, preferably a food container of some sort with a clip-on sealable lid. Fill it with white mineral oil and use the same gland to house the 8-foot cable. So a bit disappointing, but the reason why I used an aluminium box to house this voltage multiplier was because I could not find a project box or a potting box of the exact size, so I had to weld one up out of some sheets of aluminium. So when they arrive from China, I'll solder them into a configuration, the Cockcroft multiplier configuration, try and find a plastic box and see if that works. I was a bit disappointed I didn't have the camera on to show the first time what this was like when I first plugged it in. There were some quite considerable long arcs coming out of it, but I thought I'll try it out before I'll switch the camera on. Tried it out and it failed. Probably got about 30 seconds of output until it just died. So I think when you're playing with voltages of 150 kV, okay, it can also kill you, but it's also very hard to insulate and contain. So I think the next step will be mineral oil and a plastic box rather than aluminium box and epoxy resin. Well, until next time, have a good one.